Hey, everyone, Mr. Schachter here with the Schachtering method number 3, which is called the trinomial method. We call this the trinomial method because we're going to factor things of 3 terms, okay? In order to introduce this method to you, I want to show you an example problem, something that we did in the last unit, and that is to multiply these 2 polynomials together. So in order to do that, we simply distribute the x, and we get x times x is x squared, plus x times 2 is 2x, and then we distribute the 3, and we get plus 3x plus 6. And if we add 2x and 3x, we do get 5x, and we get an answer of x squared plus 5x plus 6. Well, this whole trinomial factoring method is basically starting here and providing the answer of x plus 3 times x plus 2. So we're essentially going in reverse, okay? When we do this trinomial factoring method, your original problem will now be the trinomial. Your answer will always be the product of 2 binomials, okay? So it's going to be a binomial here and a binomial here. Now, for the purpose of this first introduction, when the leading coefficient is always going to be 1, these are always going to be x and x. And the reason is because if I multiply this guy by this guy, I do get x times x, which is always x to the second. So no matter what happens in this unit, as long as the leading coefficient is a 1, this will always be an x, and this will always be an x. Okay? The next thing is going to be, well, what numbers do I place here and here in order to achieve basically the idea of we need a 6 here and a 5 here? Well, you're going to notice, obviously we have the answer, it's right here. You're going to notice that there's a pattern. And it's simply that the numbers that are placed in the outsides, right here, these little highlights, they have to multiply to give you the 6. So these 2 numbers together, they must multiply to give you the 6 right there. And then they have to add to give you the 5. So the idea is that the number choice that you pick, they need to multiply to 6 and add together to give you 5. And that's how we're going to figure out which 2 numbers go there. So obviously we know that it must be 3 and it must be 2. And of course, if we need to add to get a positive 5, then of course this is going to be a positive and a positive. All right? There's one more thing I want you guys to notice, and that is when we're doing a normal problem like this. So we'll just do this. This is just a normal problem. I just use B and C. They could be anything, any numbers. When we're doing this, I want you to pay very particular attention to the value of C. And the reason is because if you multiply 2 numbers together, and the answer is a positive, the question is which 2 signs could multiply together to give you a positive? Well, you could do a positive times a positive, or you could do a negative times a negative. Do you agree that a positive times a positive gives you a positive, and a negative times a negative gives you a positive? So if the number on the end is a positive, that means that your binomials must be a plus and a plus, or a minus and a minus, okay? If your number on the end is a negative, so if this was instead like a minus C, whatever that value of C is, the only way to get a negative result when multiplying is to multiply a positive times a negative. Okay? So you can just learn to be strategic with your signs, and that'll help narrow down the choices. In the next video, we'll do some practice problems.